Hey everybody, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and we are doing the IronTrap podcast where we talk about all kinds of stuff. And today is a much requested one. Got my dad. He doesn't know he's doing this. We kind of just told him like an hour ago,
Hour. It was like 15 minutes.
15 minutes ago. My dad we've been working on the office down in the new building, and we had a few minutes before he's leaving to go back home to Delaware, and we figured we'd grab him. And I thought it'd be fun to talk about how you got into cars and the whole Iron Trap thing, and it'll be super simple and painless. So just
Okay.
talk to me. Don't worry about the camera. Just yeah. So, and some of this stuff I want to remind myself. When so you've told me a little bit, but how did you get into cars, or when did you first start being noticing cars? I guess I should say. Like,
I started when I was 16 and bought my first car.
okay,
And I broke the car a lot and had to fix it in the driveway a lot. So that's how I ended up starting to be a mechanic by working on my own stuff
okay,
and
and
fixing my own screw ups. And
yep, yep. Now you, uh, my uncle, your brother Lloyd. He was a bit older than you, and you told me a little bit of You were exposed to some car stuff when you were younger, right?
um, well, he did a lot of repair on his car, motor swaps and stuff in the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to steal his tools and go and use them for
Wherever.
other things than wrenches and screwdrivers. And he used to get mad at me because I took the tools, and he would chase me around the yard and up and down the stairs. And
And Lloyd's been over a handful of times recently, and he was talking about some of the cars. He had what, like a '50s? It was like an early '50s Ford.
a shoebox Ford, I think it was.
Okay, and yeah, because he had talked about doing some kind of engine swap or something in it, and that's probably where you were stealing the tools and
Well,
stuff.
him, school. He was like 16, 18 years old
Okay.
at the time, and he had a lot of buddies that had cars.
Mm-hmm.
And the two or three of his buddies had, their fathers had garages, and they
That's how he was. He was kind of tinkering because he had friends that had,
right, and they all used to, work on each other's cars and help each other work on cars. And
Now, like as you were growing up in old cars and stuff, what were some of the cars that were cool in the era when you were growing up, or what?
well, it was the era I growing up was the muscle cars, the late 70s, early 80s muscle cars.
Mm-hmm.
And I started off with a Ford Falcon, and then I had a '66 Mustang
Mm-hmm.
that I had that I drove and blew the motor up, and then I put it up in my parents' backyard for years.
Mm-hmm.
And then before you were born, I had to move it because they sold the house.
Mm-hmm.
I either had to junk it or move it,
Mm-hmm.
and I brought it up to the house in Boyertown
Yeah.
and I redid that whole thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I had it in the garage for years.
Hmm. I don't remember that.
You were still,
Really young then.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
a '66 Mustang convertible.
Okay. Oh, convertible.
Yeah,
Cool.
but I didn't keep it original. I tubbed it out, and
Oh, all right.
I had a 302 Boss in it.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. And that was but was it a six-cylinder car
No,
originally?
well, originally it was a six-cylinder car.
Okay.
I pulled that out and I originally put a regular 302 in it, and then I found a 302 Boss in a junkyard,
No kidding.
and I had a bunch of machine work done to that, and had that done,
So was that a
11-to-1 compression and all that. That I fixed that all up. I After I did, it was one of those things. After I did all the work to it and had all the work done to it, it just sat in the garage. I never drove it because I had so much time and money in it.
you didn't want
And then
to
that's when you and Jimmy were born, and I spent a lot of my time working to pay
pay
the
for
bills.
two snot-nosed kids, right? Now, did you find the Boss engine in a Mustang or was it in something else?
It
Or
was in something else. I forget what it was in.
no
It
kidding,
was
man.
in a truck, I think.
Wow, that's a pretty good,
4-bolt main.
pretty good find. Now,
Well, at that time they were around yet.
oh
They
really?
were still around in junkyard. You're talking, when I found that was the mid '80s.
Oh okay. So
Yeah.
you still kind of find them. I had assumed they were like really coveted even then, but I guess they were. Somebody probably smashed one and put it in a truck, and then you got lucky and found it. Now, what did you you were into the vanning thing when before I was born, right? You had a
Well,
van
before I got married, I had the Dodge van,
with the
um,
shag carpet and
and yeah, all that, and the
the bubble window.
little bubble window, and it had the side um, lights inside and paneled
Hmm.
inside and all that.
Right. Now that they were everywhere when.
At that time, that was the big thing.
Okay.
It's like they through the ages, there's always been like a
Trends.
trend.
Yeah.
Like the 4-wheel drive trucks and the vehicles are pretty popular now, and
They were popular years ago as well, right?
um, but they
Not
weren't
some
popular like people were using them for pleasure vehicles. They were more
just
when
work.
I was younger. They were all work trucks.
Oh, huh.
People bought a truck. Usually, they were using it for a truck. They weren't using it for an original just to drive around.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. I
You know,
thought that there was
I
maybe
bought
if
I bought the trucks that I had. I bought them because I worked on a farm,
right.
and I used to use I used to use them on the farm a lot. I had my tools in the back and drove around the farm working on the stuff.
Okay. I thought because of like the Bigfoot thing and some of that like guys were getting into lifted trucks and
Not so much back in the '80s. That's
really.
early. That's in the '90s and
Okay, that was
2000s.
okay. Now,
And now the diesels are big because
yeah.
the emissions. They're getting around the emissions because
Hmm.
of the cars have a hard time doing the high performance stuff with the cars
Hmm.
because of the emissions.
Okay. Now, it's not car related, but I think it's a neat story. The you were into road bikes, and that was that in the 70s when that was big, like when you were doing the
Bicycles,
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
and you
That was way before you
right.
were born, and I met
How
your mom.
how old were you? You
I
think?
was, you know, 16, 17, 18.
Oh, okay. And you rode cross country, right?
I rode cross country,
And
rode across country, and rode the bus back,
it's
and
crazy.
never came back. Never came back through.
Yeah. Now, what made you just like, yeah, we can do this?
Well, that's because my best friend. That's what he was into, and
But you guys weren't like,
we went across the country to. He was going to college in Olympia, Washington, and he
okay,
wanted to ride his. He was riding his bike out to from
Washington.
Pennsylvania to Washington, and him and I, did a lot of things together, and I
Right.
decided I was going to do it with him.
But that's just so crazy. Like you guys were just you just kind of like
Well, we did a lot of bike riding trips. We did trips.
okay, so it wasn't just like a
I rode earlier that year that we went out. I rode up to Maine and back with him
wow, that's crazy.
in the summertime, and I did a lot of trips on my own that I rode.
Wow. So when you were going cross country, I mean, it's not like today where you can just like look up. You just slept wherever or like
A
a
lot of times we tried to find open fields or places, wooded places we could go up in and
hmm.
just pitch a tent and sleep, and then we get up in the morning and ride again.
How many miles do you think you guys were doing? And
I don't remember. We were doing it depended. If it was raining, we only made like 60 or 70,
hmm.
and if it wasn't raining, we made up to 100 miles a day.
Wow.
And
So
with loaded packs and
yeah, that's crazy. So that was the only time you really were west of like
yes,
Ohio, really,
yes,
or okay,
yes.
that's crazy. And then that was your little bit of traveling, yeah. Now, did you ever like with guys racing and stuff like that when you were younger? Did you have buddies that? Did you ever? I don't know if I ever asked yet. Do you guys ever? Did you ever get into drag racing or any of the?
We did some of it on the street.
Right.
We used to race our cars on the street, but that was kind of fading out when I got,
Okay.
the racing on the street.
Now, do you remember cruising High Street when you were?
Yeah, cruising, but we didn't, you know.
Yeah, it was just.
Occasionally there were some people tried to race in Pottstown, and most of the time they would get caught.
But you were there. I mean, you were around during the 70s. High
No,
Street was
my
crazy.
brother was more into that stuff. That was the things that they used. Him and his friends used to do a lot of.
Okay.
They used to do a lot of street drag racing and.
Hmm. But then over the years, I mean, my memories from you with cars is you were hopping up. People always ask me these questions about you and cars, like putting a big engine in your truck. The truck you drove. That was kind of what you started doing, right? It was more like.
Yeah. I bought a truck and I wasn't happy with it. I bought a brand new truck and I wasn't happy with the engine that was in it. So I went to a junkyard and bought an engine and had machine work done to it, built an engine for it and put it in. And
Right, and that's probably the one I think of. Was it a built 302 or was it a big block that you would? Was there one that you put?
that was a 351
Oh,
Windsor
yeah.
small block
Okay, so
that I had built.
that's the one I was thinking of, and you put it in a truck. And now, was it always been Fords, or were you ever into other brands like other?
Well, I had Dodges when they were younger. I was into Chrysler. I had when Jimmy was little, I had three different Dodge Challengers. I had a 71, 72, and a 70
No
Dodge
kidding.
Challenger.
Anything with a good engine, or were they?
The one was a 340,
Oh, nice.
and it was the 340 with the dual points, dual points and dual distributor.
Oh, okay. That's cool. And they had to be cheap. They were still cheap.
And then I had a 440. The one had a 440 with the slapstick
Oh, no kidding.
transmission.
Dang. People are like, that's like people are dying for those things now. I guess Challengers, I don't follow the market, but the Challengers was big. It was a little bigger, right? That was
Yeah, well, I mean, the Barracudas were the same thing, but it was a Plymouth.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Challenger it was the same body, just different body, just different chrome trim and
Right.
a little bit different interior.
So those were readily available when you were buying them. That was
There was a lot of those around.
Okay.
I bought most of those. I bought except for the 440. The one with the 440 slapstick. I bought that already made like that.
Oh, okay.
Somebody had built that.
Okay.
The other two that I had were mom and pop cars
Mm.
that were just cars with like 318s in them, and I took the 318s out and put the 440 into one.
Nice.
The other one I left the 318 in, and I
And now those you just kind of got bored with them and sold
well,
them.
one of them I wrecked because
Go figure.
I had a Krieger SS that blew apart in the front wheel going down 422, and it pulled me off the road and rolled the car, took it down an embankment, rolled it over. And
Oh, I didn't know that was a challenge. I know you told me that story before.
That was the 71. It was a white with blue interior.
Oh man. Yeah, so that
That
wrecked
was not much of a car. That was just your everyday. That was my car that I was working on. It was a mom and pop. It had a 318 in it.
It just
And
had
I
Krieger's
put
in it.
Krieger SS. I bought used Krieger SS's for it, and had tires put on it. And the guys that put the tires on it cracked the wheels
Oof.
because that's got those raised centers.
Yep.
And the guys had those machines where they
Yes, they
spun
tightened
the thing down in the center, and when you started airing the tire up, if you didn't loosen that up, it would crack the center.
Oh.
Because they were a magnesium center and a chrome
I think
outside
a
piece.
steel center, I think, on those, right? On Krieger's, but yeah, I mean those two-piece wheels like that, definitely if they tightened them down too much, that stinks. Well, good thing did you walk away? Was it like
I spent a day in a hospital. I mean, I got taken away in an ambulance.
wow,
But the car was completely destroyed. But I had insurance on it, so I got money back. And
kept moving. What was
I,
the big car that you had that was Chrysler or
I had a Chrysler Imperial LeBaron.
okay,
That was back when I was 17.
and that was like early '60s? Is that what those were?
It
Something.
was in 1960.
Oh, okay. Push
60, it had the big satellite tail lights and
push button trans and
push
all that.
button trans. It was a real fancy car. It had all the bells and whistles for that year.
Yeah, the stainless. Is that the one?
Stainless steel piece over the door,
Oh
and the
wow.
kick panels were stainless steel.
Hmm.
So,
Where'd you find that car?
oh, I found it at a car lot. It was on a car lot, and it was a time when I was in between, and I thought it was a neat car, and
Big car.
yeah,
That's cool.
that had a 440 in it.
Hmm. Jeez. So the 440 was kind of the hot.
For the bigger cars,
Yeah.
I mean, most of your bigger cars are station wagons. That's what they put
Hmm.
in the bigger cars.
That's cool. Now, as you got married and had us kids, you kind of phased out of doing cars for pleasure, I guess, and it was just work vehicles. Did you? You just had. I mean, all I can remember as a kid is we had some. You had a Mustangs, a little bit, and the Ford trucks. Was there anything? I don't remember anything
Ford
other.
trucks, and I got your mother that Mustang too.
I remember
That was
that.
pretty much the same as a Pinto.
Right. We had Pintos. I remember that.
Well, I bought real nice trucks, brand new trucks,
Hmm.
and they were my good vehicle. And then I would buy Pintos for beater vehicles to drive back and forth to work.
Right. And was it one of my?
And most of those I got for either free or I got for $25 or $50, and I would put two or three of them together and make a car and drive it for a year, year and a half, two.
Hmm.
You know,
And
and
but that so they didn't really take off. They're still worth $50, I think.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know Pintos, but I mean they were all four cylinders,
Yeah, they're
2.3 four
right.
cylinders with a timing belt. And I got real good at putting the timing belts on them. I used to put them on the side of the road because they commonly blew off
Really?
or jumped.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean,
okay.
it wasn't an interference motor. If they jumped when you were driving,
Shut
it
off.
would just start popping and shut off.
Oh, okay. You can just change it out. One of my favorite was it a Pinto when we were tearing the old barn down? What was
The
the
Pinto, when we were tearing the barn down, that was my dad's old Toyota Hilux,
Oh, it was a
a
Hilux.
1970 Hilux, Toyota Hilux pickup.
So I don't. All I remember is you cut the beam and did
I
Jim.
went inside with the chainsaw and I cut all the beams off at the ground level, and then I hooked a chain through the wall, and I had Jimmy drive the truck and pull it off the thing, and it took a few tries until we actually got it to fall off the foundation.
I that is like a formative memory of mine as a child of seeing this ridiculousness go on. I just that was just
I had to go back in two or three times and do some more cutting before it finally pulled it all over. It was a
uh,
termite-ridden barn,
yeah. That's wild. Yeah, and that's
but the reason I did that is because we had your mother had a pony at the time,
hmm
and the barn was falling down. I wanted to rebuild it, so I started that. We pulled it off the foundation in the spring. I didn't have time to tear it down and dispose of it. I needed to start building the new building
hmm
because it was just me building.
right. Yeah.
So I built the building in the summer, so the pony had a place
hmm
to go inside for the winter.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That was the purpose. I needed to get it off the foundation so that I could start building a new building on the same foundation.
I think that. Do you think did the crazy stuff like that start with you, or was my grandfather, your father, was he doing wild stuff like that? Not
My
really.
father, no, but my grandfather, yes, he did. He built his house and garage by himself,
Hmm.
and that was during the Depression.
Right.
He bought the property and built the house, from by scratch with a hammer and nails.
Is
And
that the place I was in?
no, it used to be down in Pottstown, right off of 422.
Oh, okay.
So, or 724, where the 422 goes over the Schuylkill River.
Mm-hmm.
Their property used to go up right up against the Schuylkill River.
Oh, okay.
They had like 7 acres there. He used to have a house and a garage, and the rest of it was in garden,
Okay.
farm ground.
Wow. So, okay, so our grandfather, your grandfather, my great grandfather was also doing some of this, I can
Well,
do anything kind of or figure it out
yes, and
mentality.
he was into cars because him and his son, my uncle,
Mm-hmm.
were in business together in Hanover Town, New Hanover, where Route 100 and Old Route 100 and New Hanover Street
Okay.
go together.
Yep.
He had a garage. He had a Volkswagen garage,
Oh, right.
and he
Yeah.
used to work with his son, my uncle Bill,
Mm-hmm.
and he worked with him, and they were in partners for a while in that business, the Volkswagen business.
Okay.
And then my uncle Bill's son took the business over when Bill
Mm-hmm.
wanted to retire, and his name was Bill, and he ran the business for a few years.
Is that where I remember you saying that Grandpa had a like a Volkswagen bus or a transporter, like a truck bus?
That's where he got it from. He bought it off of my uncle Bill.
Okay. That's crazy. It had a split windshield.
Yes.
Yeah. Man, I wish he still had that. That would be cool.
He
But-
had a couple engines in that. That was, I used to, when I was a kid, before, like, say, when I was like 13, 14 years old, I used to drive that truck, that Volkswagen truck, in the field up in the back.
And it held a lot. One thing I remember you saying is it held a lot of weight. You guys,
Yes, it did. That truck was amazing what it could haul. I mean,
especially with that.
and it
little
had the
engine.
sides, it had like just sides that flipped up on the
Yep.
side, and you flipped handles, and then you could flip it all down, and it could turn into a flatbed.
Right. Yeah.
So you could have things sticking out on all three sides if you wanted to carry it.
Now, did Grandpa actually like drive it on the street, or was it more of
Yeah,
a
he
work?
used to drive it back and forth to work,
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
but it didn't. He stopped driving it because they didn't give any heat.
Yeah.
They were air cooled
Yep.
Volkswagen engines, and and it had a little air duct that went up under the body and between the frame and up to the cab, and it was like cold air blowing out of there. I remember driving that riding in it in the wintertime with him, and it was like freezing.
Couldn't get
And
anything.
he used to drive it like an hour to work in the wintertime.
Holy moly.
I mean, it was great in the snow, but as far as being cold, you froze to death inside of it.
Sheesh.
No heat whatsoever.
So, when Jim and I, my brother and I got Jim started showing interest in motorcycles and cars and different stuff like that pretty early on, right?
Yeah, he started building go karts.
Okay.
He never finished it, but he started with a go kart, and he was messing around with lawnmower engines and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Much like his son Evan is doing
Right.
now. And
I mean, when you guys were little, you were just a baby. When you were a baby, he was the one that was mowing the lawn and doing stuff like that, because I used to. And then when he got older and you got old enough to mow the lawn, then I wanted you to mow the lawn. I taught you how to mow the lawn, and you were doing mowing the lawn and doing all that.
okay, I don't remember that, but
Well, it was a little more difficult with you. Jimmy was.
yeah, I was the loose cannon.
Well, you had more other interests all the time, and
Yep. So Jim was doing the doing four-wheelers and different stuff and go-karts and all that. And I don't know about Jim, but at least me, I remember I was in the BMX bikes and bicycles, and people always ask me about how I learned how to weld. Obviously working for Eastwood and doing a lot of videos, I've showed how to weld, but I remember I like broke my BMX frame or something, and like jumping it off a jump, and you showed me like with I don't know if it was a stick welder or the MIG welder, and you
Well, I always had the philosophy with you and Jim that if you broke something, you needed to learn how to fix it yourself. That was my philosophy.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I could do it. I
Right.
could do it for you. But I
Mm-hmm.
would rather see you fix your own mess ups
Mm-hmm.
and see Jimmy. And I guess and I think your brother kind of resents a little bit of that because I made him fix his own mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I helped you a little bit more with yours later on.
I'm the younger one, so yeah, usually the younger
Right.
sibling gets a little easier. Yep.
But even so, I still wanted you to learn how to do your thing, fix your own things.
Yeah, I remember having to.
If I was out if I was going to work on your car, I wanted you laying on the ground right alongside of me.
Mm-hmm.
If you weren't going to lay there and help me fix it, I wasn't working on it. I was
Right.
going in the house. That was my philosophy.
Right. So I remember that was the one thing I remember is breaking my bike frame or something and welding. It was like my first memory of welding something on my own. I don't know what happened. Maybe it worked. I don't remember. But you pretty much just had a stick welder and a MIG welder at the house, right?
Right, and the MIG welder was just a 110 MIG welder, one of the early 110 MIG welders.
Mm-hmm.
That was really mostly for sheet metal.
Right. And I know like for anybody that's listening that your background was you were by this point when my brother and I were grown or not grown kids, you were equipment mechanic, right? You were doing um, diesel equipment
Yeah,
mechanic.
by the time you were born, I was into the heavy equipment. When Jimmy was little, I was working on big trucks,
Mm-hmm.
tractor trailers.
Yep.
That's what I did. I started off with, and
And that was where you told me when you worked for Bruce West at
yeah, I worked at West Motor Freight.
and the little tie-in here is Bruce West was a pretty legendary 32 collector in our area, and you remember him having.
We
Oh,
used to go over a couple of the guys he used to ask that knew how to weld pretty good,
mm-hmm.
and he used to ask us to go over and do some welding on things for him and at his house.
And he had
And
all.
I did some welding for him a couple times, and other guys that worked in there did other things for him.
But you guys didn't really. I guess it wasn't that big of a deal how many cars you had or what he had at the.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we thought it was amazing, but he owned a business and he had a lot of money,
Right.
so people that had a lot of money had nice things like that.
Yeah.
I could not afford things like that.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why I think that had a lot to do with why I wasn't interested in that type of stuff.
Because it's always been kind of premium
Yes,
stuff, right?
and we knew that he was like one of the main collectors of 32 cars and parts because he had trailers and trailers, tractor trailer, the old tractor trailers from West Motor Freight, the ones that weren't fit for the road anymore. He would park them over at his house and he would use them for storage. He had cars and parts and what have you all filled in them, and there was like, I don't know if there was 100, but there was quite a few of them parked over at his house.
Right. Yeah, and that building I went to when they had an auction, there was, I mean, maybe a dozen or 20 trailers, and they were supposedly all full before the sale. They unloaded them, but that's incredible that locally here we had that much. Now, do you remember, going on a side tangent, Doc Pat that had the motorcycle? Because we went there for veterinarian.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did,
The Dr. Pat.
yeah, do you remember people talking about his motorcycle stuff? Like,
No, no. I only ever knew about his, being a vet.
okay. Yeah, because he had a legendary motorcycle collection. It was a lot of his bikes are like in books, and he was one of the top antique motorcycle collectors as well. So I didn't know if you had heard of that, but some of the other older guys have come over and told me, like Joe, I mentioned about how many bikes he had, and he had some really, really rare bikes and stuff like
Well,
that.
he
So
had a big horse farm and a horse estate down there across from where the veterinary office was.
okay, so that.
That's where his residence was,
Mm-hmm.
and the house and whatever outbuildings and stuff are down off the road pretty good. You can't really see too much.
Right.
from the road.
Do you think that it seems like there's a lot of that stuff in our area. Is it the Pennsylvania Dutch mentality or something that, like, I don't know. I feel like there's always been a lot of collector. You didn't get like that, but it seems like they're back in the day. I hear about a lot of guys that had a lot of stuff laying around like that. I don't know.
Well, I guess so. I mean, the older guys probably did a lot of talking about, what things were worth, things are going to be worth money in the future,
Mm-hmm.
or this is something that you ought to start collecting. It's like,
Right. Hmm.
all those flatheads that guy has over there in 562 that were
Mm-hmm.
sitting out under tarps. I mean, he must have figured that stuff was going to be hard to get at some point,
Yeah, I think
and he got it from that scrap guy. The scrap guy was just pulling them out of the cars. And,
Yep. Yeah, so I don't know why our area has so many guys that were collecting in excess, I guess you could say, not just like having one or two of something. But so so when I was younger, I obviously got into the Volkswagen thing when I was just when I could just drive. And I remember we went and got it was like an orange GTI. That was my first Volkswagen Golf. Remember that? Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I remember
Remember,
that.
and it was like my first nice car or hooked up car, let's say. And I mean, what was when I went on that tangent where you're like, what the? So you just,
I don't know. I never really cared for Volkswagens.
mm-hmm.
Um, you don't really want to know what you know what I say about them.
Yeah, I
Germ, most things German equipment, German heavy equipment and
mm-hmm.
stuff. I always thought it was over engineered.
Okay. I mean, a lot
I
of people
mean, and
say
I
that.
think
Yeah.
that Volkswagens follow that same
Right. Yeah.
suit. They're over engineered. They over engineer the electrical systems and a lot of things. They put in two,
Complicated.
three, four relays to do
Right.
one
Right.
simple thing, like turning the headlights on or lower high beam.
Right. Right.
And I used to try to help you
I know as a
figure out electrical problems on the cars that you had, and I was like, you used to get mad and
yeah. Well, I remember you getting frustrated because it was not your norm what you're used to working on, and I was just learning. So I'm like, so I think a lot of the German car stuff I was forced to learn on my own because you didn't have
yes,
knowledge on it, and
and I had no interest in it.
right.
So
So I remember, like, I had that car. I think I broke a timing belt, and we like flat towed it to a shop because it was a dual overhead cam. Remember that same orange car?
yeah,
I think I broke a timing belt, and it was just like. But I was doing the Volkswagen thing I got heavy into that for a while. So in your old garage, there was dozens of cars in and out of the garage all the time getting. And then I
yeah.
was
I
doing
mean, your
service
your
work.
brother did that before you got into it.
Yep.
He used the garage for a long time, and then
Yep.
it was after I was doing stuff.
Yeah, and I think we followed suit. Like when we were kids, you were doing work for guys, so we were both doing kind of like work for friends and stuff. I know I did a lot of like transmission swaps and stuff for people to make a few bucks in there over the years. But that was just a little two-car garage. Did you build that garage or was that?
No, that was there, but the roof was falling in, and there was no concrete floor in it.
Mm, okay.
The block walls were good yet, so I rebuilt. The first year we bought it, I put a new roof on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then after about 5 years of living there, um, from the company I was working for, I borrowed equipment and dug it out, put stone in it, and then the company I worked for, they have a concrete company, so I bought concrete through the
Yeah.
company and poured concrete inside of it.
I vaguely remember that, I think. When you did that, I think I was very small.
And one of my friends did concrete finishing, and he floated it and did the troweling finished inside.
Oh, okay.
But I poured 6-inch concrete in there. It was kind of overkill.
Could have put a lift, just
Well,
about.
I put it because I thought, well, with Jack and some of the bigger trucks, I was
Okay.
doing mostly trucks repair.
Yeah, yep. Hmm.
I got really big into the 80s, the 351 modified and 400 engines. I was putting rear main seals
Oh, okay.
and main and rod bearings and stuff in for people.
Hmm.
I got pretty good at doing it. So
And I, as a kid, I mean, I'm jumping forward a little bit, but as I became a teenager, I was definitely like a lot of people getting in trouble and doing dumb stuff, and kind of like I guess the switch with me was do you remember me going to Europe a bunch and stuff like that, or were we
yeah,
not?
you had a friend in Germany, and or at least that was what I
Yeah.
understood.
Yep.
You had a friend in Germany. You used to go over and stay at his place, and then go into junkyards.
Yep. Yeah. So we were doing that, and was that kind of odd that I was just doing that? I mean, I don't know if I've ever asked you that. Was it just like, because I just started at that point, I was on my own, so I'm like, hey,
Well,
I'm
you
going.
were over 18, and I couldn't tell you what to do anyway. So
I'm
I
like, I'm
mean, it
going to
was
Europe.
it was a little frustrating. I mean,
Because I didn't really. I mean, that was.
worried about where this was all going.
You didn't really know where or what. I kind of would just say, I'm going to Europe for a week or two or something.
A lot of times you would go, and I didn't even know you were gone.
Oh, really? I don't. Well, I mean,
You didn't call me and tell me you were going. I would call you to ask you how you're doing, and like I do now, I call you once a week or so to see how things are, and that's
I would be like, oh yeah, I just got back from Europe or something like that.
yeah, or I'm going to Europe, and that's what it's pretty much the same as right now. I
Yeah.
mean, I call you, and oh, I'm going to Australia, and
I've definitely gotten a. I don't know if I'm the only one in our family. I got the travel bug, I guess I could say, because I don't know if. I mean,
Jimmy's a homebody. He doesn't. I don't think he has any interest in traveling.
yeah, and I think. I think coming from a small town and living in the country, it intrigued me. I think the European cars thing is what got me to want to travel because I was reading magazines about Europe and stuff like that. So it's kind of like intriguing to, go there and see that. And then it all kind of went from there. Um, but I can remember like the people always ask about how do we get into buying and selling and, what we do now. But like when I was a kid, I got super heavy into the baseball cards and football cards and all that. And I remember you taking me. We used to go to like those card shows and
Yes,
stuff,
correct.
and that was for a short period of my life, or a period of my young life. I was really into that, and I remember getting the
Hmm.
little book the Beckett that you could price them, and I
Right.
used to circle them and go and trade and all that. And that was, I don't know how long. I mean, I don't remember how many years I did that, but it was for a little while.
Mm,
But
it might have been 2 years. That's about it.
oh, really? Okay. I couldn't. I amassed a. I guess this is all kind of the same because I amassed a lot of baseball and football cards in 2 or 3 years because I still have like all of them. And
Well, I mean, I used to buy them for birthdays, and used to
mm,
buy it when you were heavy into it. That was your birthday presents and your
mm,
Christmas presents and all that stuff. That's what you wanted. So
yeah,
I was always big on buying things that were useful for Christmas
yeah, we
and
wanted.
birthdays and stuff instead of just
Hmm.
stupid stuff that you would just throw in a closet and never use. It's
Right. Yeah, and I think that I was always intrigued with the you get it for this much and you can sell it for this much. So that was always neat getting those packs of cards and you find the one treasure that's in it. Doing that, I always thought was kind of neat. So, I mean, what go ahead. What were you gonna say?
well, you had you at that time you had picked certain people that you liked,
Oh yeah.
and you were after their cards, their rookie cards, and the cards, and they were the ones. They were like stars at that time, and they
Hmm.
were worth a lot of money,
Yep. Yeah, and I kept
and they were
all
they
of
were
them.
the most desirable cards at that time.
Yep. Yeah, I kept all of them. I still have them. I haven't really looked at like values, but I never had a reason to get rid of them. But like the buying and selling over time, did like I started working at Eastwood, and that was kind of like probably a big relief seeing me get a job that I liked, or that you know, was that odd to see me settle down, so to speak.
Well, I was just glad to, that you needed to. I was always worried about you taking care of yourself.
Yep.
That was just my goal with both you and your brother was to get you both to a point where you could take care of yourself.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah, I think I started recognizing that I needed to pay. Well, I mean, I always kind of, you helped me out over the years, but you definitely were not the father that like, gave us everything we wanted.
No,
So
I didn't just give you things.
so if we had an emergency, you definitely would help us out, but it wasn't otherwise. It was you had to pay your own way, and I guess I quickly realized like, hey, I like cars. I need to pay for cars, or so that's when I started going to the junkyard and like, oh, I can buy this part that's at the junkyard and sell it, and the European car thing, I did it. But I mean, you guys, I guess you kind of noticed like I went to Eastwood and then it started becoming a like I was on camera and doing some of that stuff. Was that a little odd, or what how did you, from your point of view, how did that all change? Like, was it like you guys didn't see or notice and then all of a sudden it was like, what the heck? Or I don't know. Like when I was at Eastwood, did you guys really
Well, I
did you
didn't
really
know.
know what I was
I
doing?
really didn't know what you were doing, and I didn't know much about Eastwood.
Okay,
You know,
understood.
I never really had much contact with them over the years because I was not into
Restoring cars, yeah.
that echelon of the cars.
Hmm.
I was more into the real cheap hot rods, and
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
really hot rods, but they were cars I used to put bigger motors in. You know,
Right. But like
bigger motors, different trans, and different rears, and that was mostly only because I would break them, and
mhm,
I would get when you broke something and replaced it, you tried to replace it with something better. You
mhm.
didn't go with the original.
Right. And but like when I was at Eastwood, I guess you didn't pay attention to what they were doing, so you didn't realize that I was doing whatever I was doing there. You just
Not
kind
really until the one day you took me over to show me
of my
the
pickup
the,
I had.
the pickup that you were working on.
Okay. Yeah, and then you got to actually see there
I
was a
I
shop and we were, yeah, okay. Yeah, because I was kind of just, I mean, I was doing my thing there, but I wasn't. If you didn't follow the internet, you wouldn't have had any clue what we were doing there. And I guess you weren't really, until you got a smartphone, you weren't really paying attention to the internet as much. Um,
Yeah, and I don't until you started the IronTrap
mhm,
garage, I really didn't watch YouTube hardly at all.
mhm. And as that transpired, or I should say the American car thing, were you surprised that I got into the old stuff with the flatheads
Yeah,
and
that was kind of took me all off guard because I thought the Volkswagen was your thing. I thought that was what you were going to
continue doing? Yeah.
continue doing and get bigger and bigger into.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden one day you're talking about Dodge truck pickup trucks and the Fords, the old Model A's and the 32s and
Yep, yep. Yeah, so I guess I that was probably from the outside looking in. I had admired that stuff, but it was until I was Eastwood and could start getting steady money that I could have, think about buying a Model A or
well,
something
you were
like.
getting more contacts from
Yep.
people at Eastwood too, and I think that helped you
Oh, for
to
sure.
move into that.
Yeah, for sure. And then when, with the Iron Trap thing, was that kind of surprising how that all took off? I mean, Mike and I just kind of like,
I really, when you first started it, I didn't really take it seriously. I thought it was just something that you were, you know,
just another thing we were doing. Yeah,
right. And
right. But I guess you're from the generation where internet stuff you don't you didn't fully understand it or what you could do with it. So I could see I imagine most YouTubers or people that do internet sales, their parents probably were the same as you. It's like I don't know what's this gonna
yeah, and then I still don't. I'm not
you
that.
don't understand it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I guess you've seen the growth we've had, and not just from YouTube, but doing the parts business, and I think a big part of, if anything, I took from growing up is like you were the hardest working person I probably ever met. So like that was instilled in me. So once I got my shit together, then it's like working hard. I feel like that's all in our family, blood. So I feel like I got that from you that don't know how to turn it off. You're always working and getting things done. And while I'm doing it on this stuff, when I was a kid, you were working what, two jobs?
There was
And
times I worked 2 jobs, and most every job I ever worked, I would take all the overtime that I could get from the jobs.
yeah,
And
so
that's how I got ahead because I worked overtime.
hmm
I was the guy that took the overtime, so I always got offered the overtime.
yep.
You know, instead of the other guys getting offered the overtime, they would always come to me first because I was the guy that always took it.
Right. Yeah, and I think that in those formative years, seeing you working that hard and that much, now for me it seems a lot of people I talk to, they don't understand that mentality that we've all have, that Jim has, my brother has, and you have, that you just somehow we can just work so much and get things done. So I put that into what we do now, and it seems normal to me. But when I was a kid, that's what you were doing. It's like you working 2 jobs and you're building a barn from scratch and everything else you're
Well,
doing.
I mean, everybody has to find their own niche and what things that they're good at and they like to do. And it took you a little while until you found that, and now I believe you have.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people that find it. But the working hard thing, hard working, is
Well, I
not
mean, and I'm not sure if everybody believes that way, but when I was younger, that was my philosophy. You didn't get anything for nothing.
right.
You had to work for it.
hmm
And the more you worked, the more you got.
Yep.
So that was my philosophy when I was a kid. And
Yep.
that's what my grandfather told me when I was a kid. Nobody gives you anything for free. You're going to have to work for it.
Yep.
You
So
know.
the rumors that you're a millionaire and I got all this stuff for free because you are funding IronTrap. That's not true.
Absolutely not. No,
No,
I
yeah.
made both you and your brother, you know, I could have gotten you a car and built the car and repaired it for you. But I had the philosophy, if you had to go and earn the money to buy the car, pay the insurance, and fix it, you weren't going to break it as fast. You weren't
True.
going to go out and smash it into other cars and stuff as fast. Now your brother took a little while to learn that, but
Yeah, I don't think I've really smashed up cars that much. I did a little bit, but nothing like he did for sure. But I learned that you got to fix it on the side of the road or whatever to get it home because you're not just gonna, we couldn't just call you and have you rescue us all the time. So there was a lot of, you did
well,
rescue
I
us,
would
but
rescue, but you still had to fix it yourself. I
yep.
would drag it home and we'd put it in the garage, and then you would have to lay out there in the cold, and you would have to work on it and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to go get a job and pay for the parts that it
Yeah.
took to fix it. I was not paying for it.
Right. So, do you think you have last a handful of questions? Is there a car or vehicle that you would say that's your favorite, or you always thought was money's no object? What is the one vehicle over the years that you would say is your favorite, or whatever?
I don't know that it has anything to do with money. It's just that my favorite cars are the Rancheros,
Oh yeah, yeah,
the
we've talked
old
about.
Ford Rancheros, 60s, the 60s up to the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like the so much the bigger ones, the Torino style. I like
Yes.
the old Ford Falcon style
Yep.
because I that was my first car, and that's
Why you like
kind of
that?
what I like. And I always wanted a pickup truck, a Ford Falcon pickup truck, and
Okay.
I never. There was a lot of times I would have liked to had one when I was younger, but I just you couldn't come across them real cheap, and you still can't. They're
Yeah, they're
still
they're kind
not
of
cheap
kind of under
cars.
fun. Was there ever like a Holy Grail car, like a Boss Mustang or a Charger? Or was there anything like that when you were younger that was like the
Well, the Barracudas with the Hemis in them, the old '68
okay,
Barracudas with the Hemis in them were
that was
that was like a holy grail that I knew I never could afford to buy. I mean, they were even when I was a kid in the '70s and '80s, they were they were valuable cars. They were
mhm,
like these cars are now.
right. Well, now those cars are much more expensive than these. They're six-figure cars for
I
that.
mean, they were they were the cars that guys were buying to race.
Yep.
To drag race.
hmm
And now they're cars that people are fixing up.
Right. So that was the North
That would have
Star
been the
car,
car. That would have been the holy grail car for me if you want. It's like a
right?
68 Barracuda with the boss. I mean
The Hemi
the
and
Hemi in it.
yeah, yeah. That seems to be in that era. That was one of the kings. If you weren't a
The fastback.
yeah, okay. So, and what do you think you've got more appreciation for the early stuff now that you come around and see how see it a little closer? Did you ever pay attention to the early stuff until I got into it?
Only the when you saw it in the hot rod magazines and the cars that are in the hot rod magazines. I mean, I
Okay.
was never exposed to any of this stuff when I was younger, and even in my mid age, I never. Most of my friends could never afford to have any of this stuff.
So guys didn't have like Model 8, like junky Model A's that you knew or
Most
anything?
of the people that I knew were into the muscle cars,
Oh, okay.
and then as time went by, it was pickup trucks.
Hmm.
That's what I got interested in was the trucks.
Okay. Yeah,
You
because
know,
I kind of maybe it's different when you were growing. I thought there was people still driving Model A, like used up Model A hot rods in the '70s that were maybe a '60s hot rod, and they're
there might have been, but they're not. They weren't into the group of people that I was around
okay. Yeah, it
were
makes sense.
that wasn't around. I mean, occasional people we saw had the restored, pristine, Model A or whatever.
Right.
You would see the Model Ts and the Model A's going
Putting around. Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
I mean, you used to see them Duryea days in Boyertown, and
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think the restoration thing was probably bigger back then. Interesting. Yeah, I thought there would be more of these cars running around in the '70s,
not
but
around here. I think they were. If I had to guess, you saw more of them in like magazines from California out in the West Coast.
yeah. Yeah, we definitely have some friends that were in the Allentown area that were into them, but you're probably right. It wasn't as common as the muscle cars and different stuff like that. So, well, that was a good talk. I appreciate you BSing with me. And yeah, so thank you for everything. Thank you for giving me the instilling the hard work in me. That's the only thing I could say is that I
You
think,
did that yourself. You just picked it up from me and started. Both
well,
you and your brother have done that. I know. I'm
yeah.
glad you did because that was just always my hope was that you both got to a point where you could take care of yourself.
Hmm.
Because I'm at a point now where I can't help you. So you're,
Yeah, we're
financially and physically, I can only help you a little bit. And
I'm glad
yeah,
I'm glad that you're able to come and hang out and work on some of this stuff and help out either way. So that's fun doing all of that. So, but that's all we have for this one. Thank you, Dad, for BSing for an hour or so, or however
okay,
long it was.
you're
Hour.
welcome.
And yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments, comment down below. Thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe. All that stuff Mike will drop. I'm terrible at that because Mike's not on. So thanks. See you guys.